Welcome to the Beyond the Food podcast, my sister. I'm your host, Stephanie Dodier, and today we are back with another season of It's Beyond the Food podcast, and I'm so excited about it. I just did a story on Instagram, and it's a big year for the podcast. We're celebrating our 10th year anniversary of the podcast. This podcast was started in the fall of 2016, and it's now 2026, and probably this summer, we're going to have our 500th episode. Mind-blowing. When I started this 10 years ago, I never thought we would be here today, but here we are. So I'm excited to be back with the new season of the podcast and the first topic today, which is about body positivity and my opinion of the cultural narrative that we've been living through right now. It's been brewing in me for a number of, I would say a month now, since an article came out in the New York Times, and I want to share my thought with you today. And I think that could be useful for many of you to formulate your own thoughts. So the New York Times published a video opinion, which got turned into an article on February 16th from a woman who used to be a body positivity influencer. Her name was Gabriella Lascano. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And the whole article was centered around her saying, through her own words, quote, "I'm renouncing the movement." And the internet and the cultural narrative treated it as a proof that the body positivity is over. But it's not over. It was hijacked. And on March 5th, to follow up on this article that was posted, the Today Show broadcasted an interview titled "Body Positivity Advocate Open Up on Weight Loss Drug Impact." And he interviewed again the same body positivity influencer plus another one, and also positioned a psychology expert as to what would be the answer, quote, if body positivity is over. And here's what happened. The truth, in my opinion, is that a radical, evidence-based movement that was built by fat Black activists to challenge the medical discrimination and systemic bias that people were experiencing when it started in the late 60s and 70s, in this 2026 or 2020 years, it got absorbed by the influencer economy. And when that happened, the expert left the room. Or more accurately, the actual meaning of what actually the body positivity movement was about got distorted to fit the influencer marketing model. And women, us, paid the price. Because for the last decade, the loudest voice on body positivity, health at every size, body acceptance, or even intuitive eating, my field of expertise, has not been nutritionist, psychologist, dietitian. It has been influencer that totally normally are not trained in weight neutral care. They are content creator. And content creator, no matter how well intentioned, are not equipped to tell you, the listener, what health at every size actually mean, or what self-compassion actually is, or how to actually apply gentle nutrition in your life. They're not equipped to explain what the research says about assessing weight neutral health or long-term weight loss outcome, or in today's world, what GLP-1 risk and advantage are. They're not equipped to look at people's health from a whole person's lens, physical, mental, emotional, and help people understand what actually is driving their relationship to their body, to health, and to food. And I don't want this to be an insult. I want this to be a scope of practice conversation. And today, that's what I want to have with you. And I've got a three kind of angle I want to propose to you. And the first one is about what really the body positivity movement was about and how it got distorted. And I want to use an article that Virgi Tovar wrote in Forum magazine on February 22nd, which I didn't speak to Virgi, but I think it was a rebuttal to the New York opinion piece by Gabriella. A week later, I think, was a response to that, where she perfectly described publicly the issue at hand with body positivity in 2026, which is the self-improvement camp versus the structural change camp, the expert camp, which if I was to position myself in one of the two groups, it's obviously in the structural change camp. And I think most of you listening to this podcast would go in that camp. And if you are from a self-improvement perspective listening to this, again, I don't want this to be an insult. I want to broaden your horizon as to what body positivity was really meant to be in serving who. So the self-improvement camp is where people use body positivity as a personal empowerment. It's about feeling better in your body. It's about building confidence. It's about community. It's about serving you as an individual. And then the social change group is where body positivity is a structural critique. It's about challenging medical bias. It's about body autonomy. It's about weight discrimination. It's about systemic inequality. The movement is about serving everyone in a marginalized identity or marginalized body. So when you think about social change camp, it's not just about a vibe. It's about being there for the inequality present now and in the future. And as you can see, the self-improvement camp and the social change camp are two different projects with different stake. The self-improvement version is easy to sell. It's brand friendly, it's marketing friendly, and it's mostly Instagrammable. And it's the whole issue we've been having as health expert with the hashtag body positivity. It's got taken over and literally blew up to Instagram. When you are thinking about body positivity from a structural version, it requires from you doing very uncomfortable act, reading material that really challenges your belief, and in the case of professional, your entire educational lineage. It requires you confronting healthcare inequities. It requires you staying engaged even when it's no longer trendy, quote, right now. And yeah, GLP-1 accelerated the differentiation between the two groups, and it made the split even deeper. Because in today, 2026, body positivity is economically inconvenient. And that's why we're seeing those two articles and the interview on the Today Show centering what used to be self-identified as body positivity expert coming off the group because it's no longer economically viable for them. So it gave, in a way, Ozempic or GLP-1 or Mounjaro gave the self-improvement group who were capitalizing on body positivity an exit ramp. And I'll quote Virgi word for word here from her article, which, by the way, the Today Show interview, the body positivity, New York Times piece, and Virgi's article are linked in the show note of this podcast episode. But I'll quote her here. Who leads when a movement stops being comfortable, tells you which version they were in all along. Self-improvement or structural change. So I want to be clear. In my opinion, the cultural narrative right now about body positivity is not a failure of the movement. That's what capitalism does to radical idea. It did this to feminism, it does this right now to body positivity. In a way, I see this, I'm a big fan of history, right? As I'm looking through the lens of history on radical movement, and this is a standard scenario around what happened in the last attempt for people in power to maintain the oppression of the group that demands equality, right, power, respect, and in the case of body positivity, a simple access to health care. That's what is happening right now. The grassroots movement of body positivity was always about intersectional feminism and resisting systemic oppression rather than just individual self-love. And this is why we are here in my community. That's why this podcast exists. That's why I created the non-diet coaching certification. That's why I work with people so we can make permanent, lifelong structural change and personal change. Now, let's talk about the second part of this, which is the influencer as an expert problem. Women have been getting, for the last 10 years or so, body image, nutrition, health guidance from people whose credentials are a large audience and a personal story. Lascano, in her New York Times opinion piece, is a perfect example of that. She has a genuine story. She has a real grief of losing two friends. She has a real community, but she's unqualified to draw health conclusion. In fact, the conclusions she draws in her New York Times piece are what I would consider potentially harmful conclusion. And she adds a layer by citing health statistic. She cites statistic without the full context of weight stigma as a variable, without weight cycling harm, without long-term weight loss outcome data, without the latest research on GLP-1. That is not health literacy. That's partial information which leads to harmful advice. And I want to say it's the same pattern with the other body influencer present in the Today Show. And again, it's not an insult, but it's just fact from my level of expertise. Kathy Torino, which was the other person interviewed in the Today Show, when I was doing research for this podcast episode, I listened to about 4 interviews she did in the last 2 months. And I watched a panel conversation that she or somebody posted on YouTube where she was explaining her decision to use GLP-1. And she was stating that prior to making the decision of using the medication of GLP-1, she had hired, quote, a food coach, end of quote. Not an expert, not a dietitian, not a nutritionist, not a therapist, a quote, food coach. And as a result of that, she got a fragmented picture, and the coaching, I guess, she received landed her in her, quote, body weight as the root cause of her health issue. Now, I want to be clear again. It is not a personal attack. It's not about positioning any of the two women as villain, but it's using these piece of content currently with these two individuals at the center of as an example for me to explain right now the influencer as expert problem. The influencer economy put these two women in a position of, quote, expertise and influence, which is really what influencing and being an influencer is about. and led them to potentially cause harm. Was it the weight that was at the root of this influencer health issue, or was it the years of weight stigmatizing healthcare that had failed her? Or was it emotional? Was it mental health issue that caused her to not embrace health promoting behavior? I don't know. I'm not in her. But this is what working with an expert in the field would give you a full spectrum of this. And I want to point out another angle for all of us to be conscious. The current framework, or the current way body positivity is positioned in the influencer world, is about maintaining the objectification of women's body, but objectifying the fat body as much as the thin body. And we know through research on positive body image the negative impact of objectification, no matter what the size of the body is, not only on body image, but on mental and emotional well-being. So, in the case of body positivity influencer, is the years of them talking about, quote, loving their body and maintaining this high level of objectification caused perhaps some health issue or symptoms that they are now assessing as being a weight problem. You see how complicated this situation is? So if we don't talk about the body as being the object, both the fat and the thin body, how can we talk about acceptance of the body? And this is the part 3 of this podcast episode, what the expert group actually have to say about this. What do I have to say about body positivity? For me, that is clear cut, clear and simple. Body positivity is an activism movement, not a therapeutic framework for well-being. Body positivity is about fat acceptance, moving forward, today in the moment and in the forward, that is there to combat discrimination, social stigma, shame regarding body weight and healthcare. It is not a therapeutic framework. It is not evidence-based in the context of health and well-being. What is? If it's not body positivity as a therapeutic framework for our health and our well-being, what is? That's the question we should be asking ourselves, and that's what we should be doing right now, the reframe. So let me outline some of the therapeutic evidence-based framework we can consider instead of body positivity, which is the activism movement. Number 1, health at every size. Health at every size is a weight-neutral, evidence-based framework that promotes health and well-being and body acceptance of all sizes, and shifting the narrative from a weight-centric to a weight-neutral approach to health, focusing on lifestyle health-promoting behavior. So yes, you can care for your body right now at any size. It's about accessing health-promoting behavior at any body size. And it's about the underlying value of body autonomy, which is positioning your choice, you having the choice to engage or not in health promoting behavior, therefore untangling your health status from your self-worth. The next therapeutic framework is evidently body acceptance, which is rooted in my lens with body neutrality in the embodiment theory, or partially the positive body image framework, which is not about loving yourself or loving your body. It's about developing a relationship of well-being with your body. And most important, which I want to point out that unfortunately in the Today Show, which is the second part of the Today Show interview, was actually an expert, which is a psychologist who specializes in body image that was being interviewed. In my eyes, she did not clearly explain that in order for you to have a relationship of well-being with your body, you not only need to adopt body neutrality, which is about, she framed it as a functional angle of body image, but also becoming aware of your socialization and changing your belief system that led you to objectify your body instead of caring for it. And that's the work that we do in my world, which is highly focused on cognitive behavior coaching so that we can access socialization and belief system. Another therapeutic framework is gentle nutrition and intuitive eating. It's not hashtag intuitive eating. It's not a trend. It's a validated, evidence-based nutritional and eating behavior framework leading folks to well-being. By the way, the difference between well-being and health is well-being, we look at the whole person versus just number, for example, in your blood work. So gentle nutrition and intuitive eating, it is not about eating donut and pizza all day, although you have the autonomy to do that, right? It's when we look at weight neutral health, it's all about autonomy. So yeah, if you choose to do that and you understand the potential risk of doing that, go for it. You have the autonomy to do that. But we cannot frame intuitive eating and gentle nutrition as, quote, it's eating donut all day long and pizza. It's about making nutritional decision. It's about centering your eating behavior for your well-being. And it's not about tolerating, as it was put forward in the New York Times piece, as, quote, tolerating binge eating behavior as body positivity. No, it's about regulating your eating behavior so that you can make nutritional choices for your well-being. One last therapeutic framework that I absolutely want to put forward is self-compassion from Kristen Neff clinical framework. Self-compassion is a consistent application of a nurturing, well-being relationship to self, both mental, emotional, that leads to physical health promoting behavior. So if I want to close this as about us as expert coming back in the forefront of what is hashtag body positivity, it's where we really take a moment to think about scope of practice instead of number of follower on an Instagram account. Because when you promote hashtag body positivity and you do not focus your message on the whole person, physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual, the conversation will always come back to body weight as the answer to better health or even well-being. And I think that's the most important learning of the cultural narrative we are experiencing right now. Body positivity is not dead. It's just being reappropriated to an expert group that can actually lead you with evidence-based framework. So in my eyes, it's not dead. It's a shift that was due to happen, and it's happening right now, and we are at the center of it. It's a course correction where expertise matter. And I think, this is my own lineage of thought right now, I think it's not a coincidence that this shift, this course correction is happening in parallel to the rise of artificial intelligence. And it is my opinion as well that artificial intelligence is here to stay, and it will really highlight expertise. Coach that use AI to coach their client in a therapeutic approach will not survive. Expertise matter in your ability to serve client live from a therapeutic framework is what will ensure your survival to the AI rise. I heard someone say something on a reel just before coming and recording this podcast. She said, quote, In the coaching industry, we are not in a trust recession. We are in a competence recession. And I think that's a brilliant line that I will continue to use. So your clients are confused right now. You are confused right now. And this podcast episode was here to bring clarity and to also share my perspective as to what is happening and why it's happening. I would love to hear your thoughts through DM on Instagram, because I am on Instagram. I don't have a big following because I am an expert. However, I would love to hear your thoughts. So as you are listening to this episode, please drop me a DM or leave me a message on some of the content I'll be posting alongside with this episode. And I'll see you on the next episode, my sister. If this resonates with you, the next step is the groundwork, my Beyond the Food foundational program for health professionals ready to go beyond the food and rethink how they approach nutrition, eating, and health behavior, starting with themselves. You can go to www.stephaniedodier.com/groundwork and join us now.